VBS issue has clearly shaken the corridors of power at ANC's Luthuli House. The party publicly condemned involvement of its leaders in the VBS looting and quickly referred the matter to its Integrity Commission. The Commission met over the weekend and said those implicated must be removed from their position. So why is no one listening? Maybe it's because the Integrity Commission has no clout, is providing a whitewash for the party, possibly. Let's find out what's going on. George Mashamba, the chairperson of the ANC Integrity Commission, and political analyst Sipho Sepa join me now. Let me start off with you, George Mashamba. Are your recommendations being taken seriously?
Hello?
Hello. George Mashamba, are your recommendations being taken seriously? And I ask you that in the light of the responses today from some ANC leaders.
Are they being taken seriously by the NEC? We have referred, we have made a recommendation. We haven't yet a response saying the country is taken serious or not.
So you're saying that the NEC is taking it seriously? How seriously? What do they plan to do with this information?
I'm saying I haven't had any response from the NEC because we referred this in only yesterday, so we've not got any response. I can't say they take it seriously or not.
But you have ANC leaders, we were listening to them a little earlier on, they seem to be a bit confused about what the process should be for those implicated in the VBS scandal. Have you made it clear enough what action should be taken?
By whom? I chair the IC Commission, which according to the resolution of conference of 54th conference of the ANC says that any cadre accused of or reported to be involved in corrupt practices accounts to the Integrity Committee immediately or faces disciplinary action. And we have been waiting for those who have been implicated. They haven't come. And more than that, the Secretary General of the ANC advised them to come. They haven't come. Then we took the decision that the NEC should take necessary steps and recommend that while the whole saga is continuing, they must step aside from their positions in the ANC.
Sipho Sepa, before I go into details about stepping aside and what it actually means and when it's going to happen and if it's going to happen, what is your response to the ANC response to this report?
I think, first of all, you have a contradiction between the chairperson and the Deputy Secretary General, because the ANC has not resolved the powers of the Integrity Commission, whether their recommendations are final. And Gwede Mantashe talks about the decision, that if a decision has been made, then the ANC NEC will take that decision. But at the same time, he contradicts himself. He says the NEC will debate this matter. So if there is a debate, then the debate assumes that there might be a different outcome. So effectively, George Mashamba is actually correct to say they have made a recommendation. But where I think they've fallen short in terms of their own statement, they say the people were implicated were asked to see the Integrity Commission, and they had failed to do so. And given the sense of moral outrage, they've decided to say they must step aside. But the problem with that is that you are already making a decision when people have not, when you have not had the, when the people have not presented their side of the story. And when you do that, we must also understand that we are in a constitutional democracy, and the rules of natural justice must also apply to the ANC. You cannot simply jump and say, because people have not seen us, we have made a recommendation that must step aside, and we have already found them guilty. So this is where the challenge that the ANC is actually facing. And
okay, let's put that to George Mashamba. I mean, why didn't you call them? You have that power. It's your right. Wouldn't you have preferred to hear from those accused?
Firstly, a recommendation is not a decision. That's the first thing. You make a recommendation to somebody to decide on the basis of that recommendation, the fact which is presented before you. Second, the IC is a commission of the ANC. It's not another body standing outside there. Thirdly, the people who must stand up out are not being found guilty or innocent. all we are saying that we're, in terms of the resolution pattern, we said that well, once that happens, because processes of law and all that take a long time, the ANC same will be punished in the process. We are not saying that they are guilty or innocent. And third, fourthly, if you meet with those in terms of legal rules, if you meet those people, you talk to them, and you interrogate them, you want to find them guilty or not guilty within the ANC, it will mean that, well, when the state gets into the picture, the MPA, whoever will want you to go and be a state witness there, and we don't want to be state witnesses.
Okay, so you want them to step aside. I mean, what does that mean? Is this a permanent move? Do they have to give up party membership? I mean, what is the extent of this? And if you feel that they are guilty of these sort of crimes, why didn't you send them to the NPA?
No, that's the
advise them to go there.
Wait, it will do its job. But talking about the organization here, we're not talking about criminal cases. The state will take care of that. They step aside. We are not there being expelled or being said they must not be members of the ANC. I think stepping aside, well, I'm not English speaking, but I thought that means that they are expelled. Like, for instance, Comrade Jesse there told you about Comrade Susan Devel. He stepped aside. He was not expelled from the organization. And when you talk about power, by the way, the IC is not concerned only with doing this job. There's a more fundamental job of making sure that every ANC member come to understand the values and the principles of this organization. That's why in the terms of reference, the IC must also make sure that it goes to branches, it goes to regions, it goes to provinces, making them understand the values and principles of the ANC, which have actually been evolving throughout the struggle. We came within the struggle to understand that, well, one, the struggle is not against a particular people, a particular race. Non-racialism was born in the struggle, and we want that to continue. It was in the struggle that we learned that, well, tribalism doesn't work. We want people to understand that, well, this is what people fought and died for, that whatever South Africa is non-racialism. We came to understand that, well, women and men are equal.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump in here. I mean, that all sounds pretty admirable, reminding people what the struggle was for, but something has gone wrong, right? We're seeing a lot of rot here in the party, which needs to be cleaned up. I would imagine that the Commission's role is to start the clean-up process. Is it going to work, though?
Well, first of all, the Commission must understand that we're in a constitutional democracy. This Commission has not had the side of the story of the other people. That's the first thing. And they have already made the recommendation without the benefit of that information. So one would have thought that they would try to get that. Secondly,
yeah, but isn't, sorry, if I can just jump in there, at least they're doing something. I mean, all you hear in the ANC is due process, due process, due process, and so many members who've been implicated or accused of bad behavior or, mismanagement don't go anywhere.
Yeah, but the problem is that if you don't follow due process in this country, the people will go to the courts. You already have some members who are implicated, who have approached the courts. And the courts, as processes, supersedes what the party might say. Because once the matter is before the court, even if the party says we find you guilty, if the court says otherwise, then the party will have to submit to the findings of the court. So that is the second thing that one would have thought, that the party will protect itself to make sure that its processes are fine. Then the second issue is you need to be consistent. You have this report about these other people who are implicated in the report, but you also have reports that says the ANC itself has received money from VBS. And the ANC has agreed that if there is 2 million that has gone into its coffers, it will return it. The question then is, what will the Integrated Commission do? Who will step aside within the ANC, given that they accept that there is money that
and you do, you say, you're right, the ANC is consistent, consistently backing members who are often badly behaved. So I'm just wondering from you, George Mashamba, what's going to happen if those that you recommended step aside do not? What sort of appeal process is there?
Firstly, the professor misunderstands. I must address that. We're not finding anybody guilty. or innocent. That is not our job as an IC.
No, I understand that, but you have advised that they step
He doesn't understand.
aside. So if they decide not to step aside, what then?
Yeah, and that is not finding anybody guilty. I think to get that process. This is a fiscal matter. It's not a criminal procedure. That will be done by the court, not by the IC.
Okay, but clearly their behavior has led you to believe that they need to step aside for the sake of the party, because it is your job to help clean up the party. So what if they decide not to step aside?
Hello?
What happens if they don't step aside?
That will be the responsibility of the NEC, because we recommend them. They are the elected members, leadership of the ANC, that they want to deal with political things. We give them comment as a commission, just as a commission of parliament gives.
Yeah, but if they're not elected by the NEC, then they can say no.
What is it?
They were voted in by people, so I mean, they have every right to say no.
That was the ANC thing. I'm talking about the IC now. I'm a commission member. Just like when I'm in a commission of parliament. What the parliament will go and do there and the executive does, they will different mandate from the commission of parliament.
Okay, how many people are you investigating? Can you tell us?
About the NEC. I'm not in the NEC.
Yes, no, I understand that. How many people are you investigating? I do realize that you've got to present everything to the NEC. The NEC, like you did Jacob Zuma, then the NEC decides what to do with that sort of information or not.
We are not investigating anybody. There's the structures, there's a DC, there's the NDCA. We have got a particular function. I think I've been saying this thing over and over again.
Okay, how many people have been referred to you? Because I believe that's the process as well. They get referred to you and you investigate.
This case was referred to us as the first one since I came here as chairperson, because we started operating only a week ago. I've not considered any other cases except this one. This was the first one that they given to us.
Okay, George Mashamba, just hold on for a moment because we've got a call on the line from Pretoria. Percy, what's your question? Percy, can you hear me? All right, so we have, it all seems a bit sort of confusing and you wonder why they even bothered to go ahead if this is just not a waste of time. Clearly, you've got to clean up this party. Is this the route? I heard what you said about not calling members forward to address their concerns. But where to now?
Well, that's a first. I think it's okay that, and it's proper, that there's a sense of moral outrage and that the Integrity Commission has expressed that. But expressing that does not mean you must flout the process. And the notion of the alteram patram rule is something that is sacrosanct. That before I can even make a recommendation, if I make a recommendation, I'm also making a judgment that I do think that there is something.
And do you think the process is still correct? It's leaving a lot of people frustrated that it appears that nothing has been done. So
no, the fact that they've gone this way, it's a step in the right direction, but do it right.
As long as they're not culled.
Do it right, that's the first one.
Yep.
Then the second thing is that the report itself, status of the report, is being challenged in the court of law. So effectively, what happens when something is challenged before a court of law? You suspend that so that the court can make a judgment on that, because the court process tends to be more rigorous than the party where there are party interest. But what the judge is saying is that they've taken a view that this case deserves to say everybody who's implicated and who's senior in the ANC must step aside. But as he says, they are not making any judgment. But one would argue that a judgment is made. But where you see the party having trouble is what is the status of the Integrity Commission. Gweda Mantashe says once they made the decision, and George Mashamba talks about recommendation. So you have the most senior person talking about decision. George Mashamba talks about recommendation. And of course, as I said about Gwede, he confuses himself because he says the matter then will be debated. Because if it's going to be debated, then that says it's consistent with what George says, to say it will be a recommendation.
George, do you think that this is possibly undermining your integrity or clout? Would you like to have more powers? Is that the way to get more done?
We don't want powers. and there's linguistic gymnastics here. We take a decision that this will happen and make a recommendation. There's no contradiction in that. We decide that we must recommend blah, 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 blah to the NEC. There's no contradiction in that. And there's no question of powers. Like I'm saying, you are focusing only in dealing with people. We are concerned with rebuilding our organization, and I tell you that one of the important roles is actually to do what I've been telling you about, instilling the sense of values and principles of the ANC. And the professor has got the right to have his opinion about what we are doing, as any other second has. I won't argue with him. If that's his perception, fine and good.
The NEC has to take the final decision, as you say. How do you think it'll play out, considering the divisions within the NEC?
I don't play in that area. I mean, I see what happens in the NEC is for the NEC people. And I would like to prophesy what they think when they consider our recommendation. They will tell us, and the nation when they've done so. Okay. So I would like to preempt their decisions or that deliberation.
Thanks, George Mashama. What do you think the voters want to see here? Because we are heading into election year. It's quite important.
Well, I think the society is outraged. The ANC needs to be outraged. And those that are implicated, they must be subjected to due process. If there's criminality, it must be followed. The NPA must do its job. But what you also see within the ANC is that there must also be consistency. If the ANC is accused of having received monies, then the Integrity Commission must actually say, consistent with the decision that we took on these people, then the ANC must also answer. Because you cannot simply select a few who are maybe less powerful. And when you discover that your Treasurer General might have taken the money too, and he may have been innocent in not knowing that this is a money that comes, that is a proceed of crime. That's why the ANC, they will return the money. But the Integrity Committee must make sure that when it makes a recommendation,
does anybody really, I mean, if you've got that extra million sitting in your bank account, is it always a bit of a surprise?
No, actually, this is one of those things that actually, if you take the argument that they used to present about other people, they would say the people must have known. So the society might actually say the ANC must have known about this 2 million, and they must have known that this also proceed of crime. And this is where the challenge of consistency comes in. But we're also saying this report is now being subjected before a court of law. And when a matter is before the court of law, you suspend your judgment until there is that outcome. Because if you don't do that, you might be seen as undermining the courts.
Sure. And we get the decision, I believe, on the 4th, so we look forward to hearing about that. Sipo and George Mashamba, thank you very much for talking to us.